Red Life, a building Steven movie, is a story of a young, irresponsible man that has to fight with his mom. He wakes up the next day and nobody can recognize him. Nobody can tell who he is. He is able to tell who they are, but nobody can recognize him. They then throw him out of the house, and the only person in his world that can recognize him is a bread seller. This movie is one that is full of lessons, got me teary, and we'll go straight into the review. This is a story featuring Bimbo Ademoye, who played the character of a bread seller, Todowede. Her character was one of the most interesting characters, though I had a bit of flaws with her, not with her character, but with how they portrayed her. But I definitely loved how she played out the story. It was on point. And Sumi, character played by TIMINI EGBUSON. Sumi was an amazing character. At several points in the movie, he got me teary, and I was like, oh my god, is this real life? Like, I felt like I was in the movie. Timini EGBUSON killed his character. He did all he could to make sure that he executed. I think these two executed the character. Aside these, we have Bisola Ayola, who played this character of Auntie Agi. And yes, she did her thing, one of my favorite characters. And we have MC Lively. MC Lively was also there. He didn't show so much as he was a gateman that later got fired. But yeah, that is about it. I'll go straight into the review. So, like I said, this is a story of a young, irresponsible man that believes that he was born not to ever work in his entire life because his dad has saved up a lot for him and there is money at home, so he doesn't need to work his entire life. So, all he does is to wine, drink, and waste his life away. He's been to 3 different schools, of which he gives different stories, changes courses, and what have you. Timini EGBUSON plays this character, Sumi. Sumi is one character that disturbs his mom so much that she's fed up with him. He goes out late, comes back the next day, leaves home for several days, and yes, basically that is what his life was about. Then he one day crosses the line. His mom refuses to let him go out. Then he decides, okay, if you can't let me go party, then I'll bring the party home. So he invites his friends, bribes the gateman, which happens to be MC Lively, bribes the gateman, brings his friends home, and they wine and dine. Now, I'm just going to give you snippets of the movie and then leave you hanging along the way. So, yeah, forgive me if I leave you hanging. So his mom wakes up in the middle of the night, hears loud music, then goes to her son's room only to realize that there is a whole party going on in the room. She then quietly leaves, calls the police, and they take everyone in, including the gateman who happened to be at the party at the time. Can you imagine? Yes, so he's sent to prison. He's sent to cells, like, yeah, for a while, for 2 days. I think he spends 2 days. The intervention of Sumi's sister, he's made to come back, and then his mom decides to have a pep talk with him. Seriously, tell me what you want to do with your life. After that, Sumi tells his mom what he wants to do. He goes to bed. The next day, he is not recognized by anyone. This is where I'll leave you hanging. I want you to go watch the movie and come and tell me what exactly happened. If you've already watched the movie, please leave it in the comment below. Or wait, let's just leave those who haven't watched it to go watch it. But tell me what you like in the movie. So he wakes up the next morning and nobody can recognize him. Not even his mom. His mom sees him in his room and shouts that there's a stranger in the room and nobody can recognize him. Auntie Agi, who he's close to, can't recognize him. MC Lively, the gate man who happened to even be the one that helped him have the party, can't recognize him. His friends, nobody can recognize him. They all see him as a stranger. And then they throw him out. He's on the street. He goes back, calls his sister, calls his friends. Nobody can recognize him. Then he decides that, okay, If this is what my fate is, then I'll leave it. So he goes back on the streets, begs for money at some point. Then the one person that can recognize him is a bread seller, Todowedo, character played by Bimbo Ademoye. Oh my god, I love that character so much. Now, Bimbo Ademoye in the movie played an all Yoruba character, like a typical Yoruba character in the movie. She spoke Yoruba most of the times, like 98% of the movie was Yoruba. I'm saying 98% because there's one thing they left out. Okay, I'll come to that. But yes, Todowedo is the only one that can recognize him. Why? Because she used to come to their house to sell bread to the gateman. So she has spotted him a couple of times, and he's so surprised that family can recognize him, nobody can recognize him. Even the prison he was the night before can't even recognize him. Everybody, the policeman, nobody can recognize him. They all think he's a stranger they have never seen before. But Bimbo Ademoye, playing a character of Todowedo, happens to recognize him. He tells his story, and then he has to live a new chapter of his life. How the story evolves is one that I want you to go watch. It's on Netflix, and you definitely can't afford to miss this movie. Now, what did I love about the movie? I just loved how the story pans out. It is one story you would never suspect would turn out the way it turns out. If nobody gives you a spoiler, you can hardly predict what is going to happen. You can hardly tell, except for the fact that yes, you can tell from the way Sumi becomes hardworking on the streets that yes, probably he would succeed. But it is very unlikely because he faces a lot of trials that it is so unlikely. The way the story turns out is one that is quite difficult to predict. And I must say that I recommend Building Steven so much for this one, because very often we've gotten fed up with these Nollywood movies. Why? Because it's so easy to predict. You just watch and yes, you can tell the beginning from the end. But this is one movie that you just watch and you begin. Even the title is commendable. It's one that you would keep wondering. I just kept wondering that why breaded life. Why breaded life? Is it that someone would go through problems and it is bread? Something like you can little or not at all predict why. Like there are so many questions you have from the beginning of the story, and you just get excited all the more when it's like the truth comes out, and that is the whole emotional part of it. I commend Building Steven for that. Just the part was one that really turned me on. Okay, so now let's go on to the characters. The characters did so much with executing their roles. I loved Bimbo Ademoye. I think I watched an interview I think on the night of the red carpet that she actually, or she posted it, I guess. She actually had to get someone to train her to learn Yoruba, and I commend her for that. She spoke Yoruba like somebody that has been speaking Yoruba all her life. Like she spoke it, and you can hardly tell that this is a language she's trying to pick up. And I must commend her for that. She is so good. Like her character, how she lives as a village girl, as a typical trench girl from the trenches, and I felt like yes, this girl is super talented. Timini EGBUSON Sumi in the movie was an amazing character. When it got to the point where he had to act rich, he was on point. When he had to act like every phase of the story, you just realize that this is somebody that has put himself actually in the movie. It felt as though he was in it, and it felt at some point that this was a true story. Everything he found himself doing, that there was this point, there was this part that struck me when he was trying to carry flour, packing flour. Like typical Nollywood movies, they would just pack it like they've been doing it all his life. But Timini, because of the fact that he had been a rich man once and he needed to act poor with a gradual process, he did it so well that at a point he wanted to fall, and you felt like this is so real. This is like a real rich kid trying to make it on the street, and you just feel all emotional all throughout every phase of the movie. And I must confess, at every phase of the movie, there were points I was teary. Yes, I was teary. I was so teary that I just couldn't help it. So aside the character and the storyline, I loved the setting of the movie. The setting was one that really predicted the life of people from the trenches, and that is where you get to see like how people really actually survive, and the fact that it's able to create a clear distinction from the early life of Sumi and the new life of Sumi. It was the setting alone was able to tell a clear distinction and the depth at which he had fallen. Irrespective of the fact that this was a well scripted, well done movie, it had a bit of flaws. Now, the first thing was the fact that Bimbo Ademoye, who played the character of Todowedo, spoke just Yoruba. Don't get me wrong, I loved the fact that they were able to bring the rich culture and the rich language of the Yorubas in Nigeria. The part it didn't seem real to me was the fact that she was able to speak a couple of English from the beginning. But then she's suddenly speaking to Sumi, and she comes across as somebody who not speak the Yoruba at all. And then I was like, what happened? Because when she was speaking to the gate man MC Lively, she was able to speak a few things. She was able to say, should I keep the change? She was able to say, I'll come back for my change. She was able to say, take it, like some few things, some few sentences. But she's speaking to Sumi, and she can't say anything, nothing at all, nothing in Yoruba. And the thing she wants to say, the little thing she now wants to say, she has to do more like a sign language or use her arm or something. And I was like, oh, really? Wasn't she a sane person that was just speaking a little bit of English? At least there were little things like eat, sleep, that it was expected that if you were able to speak such good things in pidgin, it's expected that at least there were a few words. But going into the movie after the very first scene, she spoke nothing by Yoruba, and the very things like I will marry you to Sumi had to practically teach her to say it, and she couldn't say it. She said it still in Yoruba, and I was like, oh, this is so not real, because it's either they forgot that from the beginning she spoke a few English or pidgin, and going into the movie after the first thing she spoke little or no. I don't think she even said anything in Yoruba, but sorry, in English. And I'm like, this is so not real. Like, if it's now that you're getting to realize, oh, let's speak Yoruba throughout, then she shouldn't have spoken the English in the first place. Now, another thing I also noticed was the fact that Todowedo goes to the family house of Sumi, goes to her mother, and decides that he's going to find out if finally they can recognize him or to plead or something. She goes to the gate and the dogs are let out on him. She starts screaming, and then all of a sudden Sumi appears, and I'm like, how did he know she was the one shouting? Where was he? What happened? Like, this is so not real. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, because this is somebody that, as she was leaving, she made it look like she didn't tell you, because of course you get angry that she was going to your family house. And then all of a sudden you show up when she's shouting. I'm like, where did this one come from? It wasn't real to me, but well, you wouldn't notice, but yes, it was so funny and not real to me. Another thing worth pointing out: these two are involved in a fight with their crushes, who assume that they were an item in a bar. Now they fight, and yes, they fast forward, they come back home and they're discussing it, and then Sumi says to Todoedo that I just love, they were commenting about the whole fight, and then Sumi tells Todoedo that I love the fact that you were able to pick the chair and hit him with it. Look at the way he was shouting when you hit him with the chair, and I was like, bro, we all watched this. There was no hitting. She only threw it. She only raised it. She pretend as if she was about to hit him. Didn't hit him, and she put it back. There was a repetition of that particular scene when he was re-narrating everything to his mother, and I was like, bro, why would you say again that she would throw something for you? And I was like, this is two things: either he forgot his line, or they just didn't play it out well. But aside that, I love the whole story. Everything was on point, and I just would love that there is a series out of this, because it can't end like this. It can't end like this. There should be a continuation. There should be, even if it's just a 5 episode series. Like, I'd love it. This is a masterpiece, and kudos to Bimbo Biodun Steven. She's loved. She's won my heart. I mean, she's won my heart. The next story remains Mami Abnapokia. Kindly hit the subscribe button and let's grow this channel. Let me know what you loved about the movie, what you noticed, and yes, about screw